no cause for alarm that the election will hold as scheduled. And I have in the studio Adeni Kunu as well as Dikmo Yewole, and we are looking at this issue. Now, Dikmo, let me come to you on this. Beyond the realities, because when we talk about the realities of insecurity, of course,
yes,
it's all over the place. You know, everyone has just been talking about the train attack now in Edo State, you know, and all of that. You know, in some other states there are issues of, you know, scoops of kidnappings here and there and attacks. So the reality of insecurity is there. However, coming to the platform of election, it's totally a different discussion altogether. And we know how conscious government is when it comes to deploying security, deploying funds, deploying intelligence during election periods. Now, do you think beyond the realities of insecurity, there was something wrong with, or something not right with the communication pattern that INEC had sent out regarding the issue of this election postponement?
Well, for me, I believe that we're trying to save face. Should, in case anything happened or happens during the elections, then they will go back and say, remember in January, we raised an alarm. And then people said we were alarmists. But for me, I believe it should go more than that because, yes, I mean, Elijah Mohammed came out yesterday to say that there's no cause for alarm, elections will hold. Yes, that is part of the things they should do, but more than that, with the things they need to have on ground in terms of the security agencies being at full alert. Because we also need to understand that deploying security agencies shouldn't just be focused on the period when the elections are holding, on the days when elections are holding. We also need to understand that there's a certain time frame before the elections where sensitive materials are being transported from one place to the other. They're going to be making use of a lot of youth corps members. Different personnel are going to be in place. Resources are going to be in place, both human and material. We need to ensure
there are even election observers who are coming from different parts of the world.
So we need to ensure that everyone is safe, and also the voters as well. So the issue of insecurity isn't just about the elections. It's a holistic matter, which is something that we talk about here every other time, that it doesn't just affect one thing, it affects everything. And when we're able to solve it, we solve the myriad of problems that we have right now. Now, if, for example, if we tackle the issue of insecurity, maybe this conversation will be coming up. But going back to INEC saying that they will likely cancel or postpone the elections, one, per their charter, they cannot do that in the Electoral Act. They don't have the powers to do that. And even in the Constitution, nobody has the power to do that, not even the court of law. Because in the Constitution, I believe Section 134(2) in the Constitution says that, I'll paraphrase, now to hold elections for the office of the president, it has to hold not earlier than 180 days and not later than 30 days before the expiration of the office of the last office holder. So you want to cancel, you want to postpone, what time frame are you looking to have that done? But what I see happening is possibly, before the end of this week, I mean, it's still morning on Wednesday right now, before the end of this week, maybe the National Assembly calls the INEC chairman, have a conversation, come and explain, and then maybe he then says, maybe we need more money, or maybe we need more support. Maybe we need more support.
I'm suspecting.
Don't worry. I'm not collecting my share out of it.
You can predict all of these things already.
Say I need more money, and saying, okay, you know what, I don't have any authority over the security agencies. You need to assist them a lot more, but we need more money because we've had a lot of facilities damage, which we've talked about a lot about that last year, where they had offices bombed, burnt, materials, some personnel hurt. And then National Assembly says, okay, because they also don't want to be held responsible. Because if you don't give them the money they're asking for, they will say it's the National Assembly, which you said earlier, that is one body that gets whatever they want. Because nobody wants to be at the short end of the stick saying that it's your fault that we couldn't hold credible elections. So don't come and tell us that, okay, we don't have the confidence that we'll be able to hold credible elections. And then after you have the conversation this week, you come 2 weeks to election, I still tell a story. Whatever the issues are, let us know them now. Whatever you need, let us know them now. But the elections, they must hold as at when stipulated.
All right. Now, Adeni, do you when you look at Nigeria,
Yes, please.
you know, from crisscrossing states, all the states, and from some of the reports you're hearing, and what areas do you think, if at all, INEC is going to, or the security agencies working together with INEC is going to say, okay, pay attention to this state, pay attention to, what states do you think that there should be more concern or more, you know, better consciousness regarding security?
The Southeast is a troubled region as we speak. I was there when they had the November elections. That should be 2021. That resulted in, you know, the leaving of office of Willie Obiano. And,
in Anambra State.
Yes, Anambra State. And I can tell you that when we got to, that was after Onitsha, moving towards Imo State. At some point, we got out of the vehicle, we had to raise our hands, you know, security people everywhere. I do not think the country should be such that people are not able to live their lives. There is something called the freedom of movement enshrined in the nation's constitution. So you'd expect that people should have that freedom, body, soul, and spirit, to go about their daily businesses, albeit peacefully. What are the disaffections, really? Because at times you just want to look at things on the periphery, and the peripheral approach doesn't help us. Then later it becomes a reactive, mediative approach, which affects us. It is very fundamental that we look at the regions of the country that are troubled, and within the context of this conversation, the Southeast, what are the things that have culminated in the evidence dissidence that we see in the Southeast? How is it that despite all the so-called, you know, prevention of the proliferation of arms and all the conventions we are signatory to, you can still get a bullet in Benin City for 500 naira?
Okay, now, Dick, what the point there is with INEC, let's dissect it differently.
Okay.
INEC is not the agency that provides infrastructure for anybody. INEC is not the agency of government that disseminates goodies or relief materials to anybody. INEC is not the agency that collects taxes from anybody. For somebody to hold grudges against INEC to say, oh, they were the ones who prevented us from doing this or doing that. INEC is just an agency to come periodically, conduct elections, and move. Now, for anybody, single person or group of people to think that let us attack INEC for any reason whatsoever could send signals that maybe some persons don't want elections to hold. Would it be, if somebody makes that kind of conclusion that some groups don't want election to hold, would that be right?
Yes, I believe it would, because in the end, who stands to gain from these attacks on the INEC offices and infrastructure? It's the political class. I'm not going to benefit from it. Are you going to benefit from it? It's the political class.
So it's like
that have a stake in the outcome.
People who would say, well, if I'm not going to get this, so let's just spoil everything.
Let's just spoil everything. So it's still within the political class, because they are the ones that have the actual stake in INEC carrying out their duties, for better or for worse for them. Because in the end, like I said, I mean, aside from maybe I get to vote in somebody that I believe would get the job done, and then I have to live with the consequences of it after, the people who are really desperate about it are the ones involved in this. So how about to take a look at the political class and see who are the people that stand to benefit from elections not holding in certain parts of the country, if not in all of the country. So that's where the conversation should start from, because it will not just happen in isolation. People don't just do things on a whim. So let's say maybe one was maybe a mistake or maybe misguided. How about 2, 3, 4, 5, a dozen? That's calculated. So that is what we need to take a closer look at, the political class and those who stand to benefit from this violence and the possibility of elections not holding. Because, I mean, for a lot of people know that this 2023 elections will be a huge decider to the nation, to the future of this nation on so many levels. So yes, a lot of people are very desperate to ensure that either they get it or no one does. But that cannot stand, because in the end, we are still an independent people with sovereignty and our own constitution that guides us. So that must be our guide. That's why we have a constitution. That's why every country has a constitution. So what does the constitution say? because these are people that are threats to our democracy. They are threats to our freedom. And what do you do to people that threaten your freedom and threaten your way of life? You deal with them. So if we're being serious about it and this issue of insecurity, investigations will have been carried out aggressively with all these INEC offices being attacked, bombed, burnt, and all of that. A lot of investigation ought to have been carried out, and certain persons should have been held to account if we are being very serious about these conversations. But somehow it always looks like we just look at things and we don't take them as seriously as we ought to. And I believe that's part of the reasons why the INEC official that came out to say, okay, you know what, this thing may not hold, it may hold. That's why I said earlier that they're trying to save face. Because I mean, like you rightly said, just in October last year, they came out and say, okay, you know what, the Northeast, the Northwest and Southeast, troubled areas where elections will still hold. We have everything that we need. We'll get more money and ensure that this thing holds. And in January, it's looking like, you know what, peradventure, something happens. So we're not the ones you burn at the stake. Maybe in the National Assembly, we're going to meet for money. They don't want to give us money. Or the federal government that has refused to talk.
Or security agencies.
Which they have also countered it yesterday, which was an intelligent thing for them to do. So now the question is, who does the box stop with? What does it stop? Who's going to be responsible for any possible postponement or cancellation? Who are the people who are going to hold responsible and say that you are the one that is threatening our way of living? So these are the things we need to look at. Who are the people that stand to gain from these criminal activities, and what are we doing about it? Because we must be very serious about it and must be aggressive about it. Once our elections are tampered with on that scale and it goes unabated, then as a people, I believe we are in trouble.
Okay. Now, Adini, the point is that the Minister of Information, Lai Mohammed, came out yesterday to make clarifications and then give assurance to the country by saying that elections will hold as scheduled. You know, we're deploying security agencies and all of that. Of course, that's a statement.
Okay.
Now, the people will still try to permutate or try to decipher all of that, juxtaposing it against their own realities, especially the Southeast that you mentioned earlier.
Please.
So is a statement like that enough to calm the nerves of Nigerians or allay the fears or panic of anybody to say, okay, since the Minister of Information has said it's okay, let's wait for election? Is that okay?
No, if you have 10 items that troubles or is supposed to trouble the elections coming, just 40-something days away, I think Alhaji Lai Mohammed only took 2 out of 10 problems off the table. There's hope coming from government, the federal government, that there'll be an election, and perhaps a consolidation of that statement made is what is expected. So 2 problems out of 10, you're still less than half. It is very key for government to understand certain realities. The major players amongst our security forces during elections are police officers. For every staggered election, for instance, this year, November 11, particularly Kogi, Imo, Bayelsa, will be having staggered election with a budget of about 2.6 billion. Now, for each of that election, you have a deployment of about 12,000 to 10,000, minimum of 10,000. In fact, you can have as much as 20,000. And why? Kogi has a history of election violence. Imo, of the southeastern state, has actually come shoulders equal with Kogi because of the destruction of INEC offices. I'm talking about the gubernatorial election.
Exactly.
The elections in water areas or aquatic areas, as it were, as Bayelsa, will be needing more hands because people have to cross boats and all of that. So going forward, government has done the first thing. We assure you there will be elections. The second, Usman Alkali Baba sitting at a global press conference with Professor Mahmoud Yakub of INEC, the chief of army staff, sitting at a global conference. In fact, if I can have my president there, because let me tell you, this is a national issue. And the president has been assuring us, as said by him, that he will ensure that this election is free and fair. And this is about security of lives and property and the property of INEC also. So what the president must do, ditto many other persons who are major stakeholders and drivers of this election, is to hold a world press conference and to give us bullet points of what security officers have laid out. We cannot use the regular modus operandi to approach this election.
Okay. Dipo, just in 1 minute before we go, what scenarios do you see going forward as we build up to the election? Campaigns are going on, people are getting PVCs, the politicians are crisscrossing the country, still wooing people for votes and so on. INEC is busy working, security agencies are mapping out here and there, election observers are watching, religious people are praying. So everybody is busy. But what scenarios do you see going forward? And in fact, also there's the bad guys who are on the other side are also trying to see where they can get the best of their whatever they want to get.
Well, now is the time where INEC needs to do a lot more positive communication to also let people know how to go about voting, either it's online, either it's offline, whatever platform they know to do that. This is the time to start to do it. Get into the rural areas, let people know that they have to vote. There's no such thing as they've counted the votes, they've stolen the vote. You need to come out to vote, get your PVCs. Of course, political parties are doing their campaigns with their candidates. Like he said, this is also the time for the police, most especially, to come out to instill confidence in the hearts of Nigerians.
Yeah.
That's why it's important that the police is there, the INEC chairman is there, and key stakeholders, so that people can see that they are coming to us in a united front to let us know that, you know what, there is no cause for alarm. We are all talking together, not what you have thought erstwhile, that we don't communicate with each other. We have communicated, we have made plans. You need to come out to vote, because another excuse people will give is, oh, the INEC has already said no security, so I'm not coming out to vote because I don't want them to break my head. That's not what we're talking about. So it is the responsibility of all the stakeholders involved to let us know that the elections will be free and fair and they will be safe for Nigerians.
All right. We put our minds together. Let's hope that the elections will hold as scheduled and nothing untoward will happen. Dipo Yewale, thank you very much for coming on the program.
Thank you for having me.